Persona 3 Reload. This is the most recent release or re-release of Persona 3 from a game that originally started on the PlayStation 2 with Persona 3. We've had multiple re-releases of this game, but I'll say this, and I'll say this very clearly for everyone. This game is phenomenal, and there are multiple things in Persona 3 Reload that I like more than more modern Persona games or Persona games that came after it. Now, if you look at Persona as a whole, obviously you have the incredibly successful Persona 5, which this game is kind of taking a lot of inspiration from when it comes to its visuals and when it comes to its UI and its design. But what they've been able to do here in terms of modernizing a classic that's been re-released multiple times, but then adding in a bunch of things that to me make the experience a lot better. I think this is one of the best remakes of all time with Persona 3 Reload. And I'm going to tell you exactly why here and what makes it so good and why you should probably pick it up if you're a fan of Japanese RPGs, especially turn-based combat. But before we get into that, what's good everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my Nintendo Switch RPG videos and live streams first. Now let's go ahead and jump into this here because Persona 3 Reload is a very interesting case from Atlus. They stated that this game was made because the fans wanted it. All of those polls that people say that Atlus doesn't even care about, they just do for nothing. Well, apparently this one paid off because this was the result of fans actually stating that they wanted a remake of Persona 3 Reload after we've gotten multiple re-releases of Persona 3 across the PlayStation 2 and also the PSP and the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox and PlayStation with the re-release of Persona 3 Portable. But now we're here at Persona 3 Reload, a full ground up Unreal Engine 4 remake of the original game. Now, let's get some of the bad stuff out of the way first, then we'll talk about all of the good. If you're a previous fan of Persona 3, you might already know at this point, but if you don't know, it doesn't include all of the content from previous Persona re-releases. So Persona 3 FES and Persona 3 Portable with the female protagonist, there are some missing things. So that's very unfortunate. However, there was a data mine apparently, and it looks like that stuff's going to be coming via DLC. Now, that is good, but at the same time, it can be a bit upsetting because this is a $70 game, and that content would have just been nice to be in there from the beginning so you truly have the most complete version of Persona 3 Reload all right there, or Persona 3 more like it, all right there on disc, not having to download anything else. So I understand from that standpoint. But outside of that, everything else in Persona 3 Reload is really good. Now, it does fall into some of the same pitfalls that you can find with Persona 5, for example, depending on how you play the game, pacing, what you use. But at the end of the day, there are many things that I like more than Persona 5. Presentation-wise, I think that the blue with the UI and the fonts and how they really slickly animate everything is absolutely gorgeous. There's so many things to like about the UI and what they've done in this game, and it makes it just a really pleasant thing. It makes it really pleasant to go through. I mean, you're going to be going through menus, equipping items, going through different things, reading stuff all the time in this game. So I think that making sure to have a good UI and slick presentation and it be fast and snappy is very important and easy to read and understand. That's one of the most underestimated things in RPG games. If you have a messy UI, you have a bunch of stuff all over the place so you don't know where to get to things and it's complicated, that can actually lessen the experience by a lot when you accumulate time, especially for a 100-hour RPG or 50, 60, 70-hour RPG, depending on what difficulty you play on. So I really do appreciate what they're able to do with the presentation and the UI in the game. And speaking of presentation, I think the graphics and the music are absolutely top notch. This is what Persona does to me at the highest class in JRPGs. The music is so well done. They have remixes of previous Persona 3 tracks. They've got new tracks in there, but the quality is absolutely off the charts. If you've got some super nice headphones or a surround sound set, you're going to want to use it for Persona 3 Reload because the quality of the music is really, really good. So I do love what they've been able to do with the presentation in this game and putting everything together so cleanly. Some of the new tracks, I just can't help but vibe out while I'm playing. And I'm thinking to myself, man, it doesn't get much better than Persona. There's very few games that I can say they're on the same level in terms of how cool the soundtrack is and how it just fits the overall tone of the game. And like when you go to your classes or the dorm or different places or locations around the city, it's all just vibing and it all just works. Every track fits for everything. So presentation wise, music wise, UI, fonts, everything, if you wrap it all up into a package, you can't sit here and say that Persona 3 Reload doesn't nail everything with that. It just looks really good. Now, everything with the graphics aren't perfect though. Some of the areas like your dorm area, necessarily not the best looking for a full remake, especially on the PlayStation 5. Now, this is a PlayStation 4 game and on the original Xbox, and it runs and looks good even on those platforms, but you can tell it was pretty much targeted for those platforms because there's some pretty basic looking geometry and basic looking things in the dorm and other places. Now, character models and some of the enemies look really good, but when you go through and you look at past SMT games or past Persona games, it isn't a huge evolution over, and there's actually a number of things in, like, let's say SMT 5, for example, that actually look better than this game. Maybe everything isn't looking quite up to snuff or super high quality, but I don't think it really takes away from the overall experience when you're playing through the game, especially when you get into the meat and potatoes, which is the combat. And that's what I want to focus on with this. Persona 3 Reload has some of the best addictive combat that I have ever played in a turn-based JRPG. Essentially, it's the patented press turn system to where anytime you exploit a weakness on an enemy, so you hit them if they're weak to electricity and you hit them with electric attack, or fire, you hit them with the fire attack, you get another turn. So it really builds momentum on your last move, and it really inspires you to make sure that you make the right choice. Now, they've done a number of things in Persona 3 Reload to modernize the combat and freshen it up from what it was originally on the previous systems that it was on. So what I like is they took a lot of cues from Persona 5 in terms of being able to shift over your turn from one person to another. So if you exploit a weakness, you can get a shift and move it over to someone else. And then from there, you can exploit another weakness. Because in this game, just like Persona 5 Royal, your main character can use multiple different personas while your other characters can only use one. So there's going to be some weaknesses that they'll be able to exploit every time. And then of course, a lot of weaknesses that your main character can exploit. So the battles just end up flowing. I really enjoy what they're able to do with the combat in Persona 3 Reload. And I like the flow of the game. It ends up just being really fun, especially when you start putting in the music and of course the UI and the slickness of everything. The Persona fusion system returns here and it's good. You get different personas, you fuse them together, you can create stronger personas, you can inherit different skills, breed different personas that you want to use in battle and dominate. So no problems there with the Persona fusion system in Persona 3 Reload. It's really well done. There are so many things added into this experience to just make the combat super fun. Now, it's pretty basic overall with equipment in terms of what you can use and all that, but I actually like that. I like the fact that it is. And this might be controversial in terms of what I'm saying, but I think that I'm going to say it anyway when it comes down to it. Persona 3 Reload has a system in here that I feel I'm so happy that they didn't take from Persona 5 or SMT, and that is the bartering with other demons to join your team. usually in a Persona game like Persona 5 Royal, for example, or SMT5, you have to talk to demons in a certain way to get them to join your team. Some of them just might join up, but usually you have to kind of like talk with them. They might try to play tricks on you and you have to be mean to them or not. And like there's different dialogue options, and sometimes it ends up in them running away or them maybe giving you money or them joining your team. And I think it's cool at first, don't get me wrong. I played it and I thought it was interesting, but after so many years of doing that, and now Persona 3 Reload comes out, wipe out the different enemies on the screen, and then all of a sudden you just get a Persona. You can just pick it out of there and then it's on your team. To me, it was a sigh of relief. Good. I can just focus on fighting and not have to worry about talking and doing all this other stuff in order to just get a new Persona. So I love the Arcana burst system. I love the Persona card system to where you can get benefits from going through Tartarus and playing and everything. I think that it just flows way better, and the pacing issue that I talked about that we see in SMT5 or that we see in Persona 5 in terms of breaking the flow is not there with Persona 3, and it's more simplistic and maybe it's not as dynamic, but I like it more just because I can get my Persona if I see it there and then I move on to the next thing, or I get my extra money and then I move on to the next thing. I don't have to rely upon trying to get that from demons and talking and potentially losing and going back and forth. So to me, I actually like this system when it comes to the combat and the rewards a lot more than Persona 5 and SMT. So to me, it makes sense there. I also want to touch on Tartarus a bit more because this used to be a procedurally generated thing in previous Persona games, and it's still like that here. But the difference is that they've added in a number of things to make it a bit more compelling to go through. And yes, it can be sometimes drab overall with the look of it, but it's far better than what it was. And they've added in a few different elements as well, like you can break these statues right here in order to get items, and you can also find twilight fragments around the world to use to open chests in Tartarus. So it gives you a bit more incentive outside of going through, leveling up, finding out what's happening with the story in order to really explore every single location and area that you're in Tartarus as you go up the tower. Tartarus is one of the main components with the story. Now, I don't want to go into too much story, and I haven't talked about it a lot here, and that's something that's intentional. I don't like talking about the story in order to, I would say, like, ruin it or spoilers. But essentially, every single midnight, it's called the Dark Hour. And in the Dark Hour, everybody goes to sleep in coffins. The main character and your party members, we're trying to find out what happens because there are special people that can actually fight against the demons at night and don't go into their coffins and sleep in the Dark Hour. And of course, there's a bunch of other things surrounding that for you to do. You have your social bonds and links with other students and with your teammates that you have to build up in order to strengthen the different types of personas as they embody the essence of those. So there's a lot of cool things surrounding the combat in the game, and the story itself is really good. But of course, I don't want to say anything that could spoil the story because I find it to be really good and I'm enjoying it even more in some respects than Persona 5 and SMT5, of course SMT5, but Persona as well. So I would say that the story is intriguing. I think the characters are cool. The voice acting is also really good. That's part of the presentation where it kind of just wraps up everything. The voice acting is very well done, and I think overall Atlus has done a phenomenal job on Persona 3 Reload. Now, I'm about 10 hours plus into the game. I just got it as of the time that it released and was able to put in a number of hours. So after I'm done with the game completely, this is just like the first impressions, not necessarily everything, but I've already played the previous versions of the game, so I kind of know what happens. But this one's fresh enough, it's new enough, it's sleek enough, and there's enough new added things in there for me to go through it again at this point. But 10 hours plus in, once I finish the game and I put 100 hours or whatever I put into it, I'll definitely have a full review of the game. But for right now, I have to give it a recommendation. People want to know, should you wait for a sale? Should you buy it? What should you do? Rent it? So I think renting it might be a little bit Probably not, because the game is too long. You can also wait for a sale, but I do feel that it's a buy at some point. Like, I don't care when you pick it up, but at some point you should definitely pick it up if you're a fan of Japanese RPGs, turn-based combat. But depending on how much of a fan you are, I highly recommend to say, hey, if you're a big fan of turn-based RPGs, then definitely pick this game up, because it is fantastic. So what are your thoughts overall when it comes to Persona 3 Reload? Is this a worthy remake of a classic cult RPG? Do you feel that they did a great job with it? What were some of the things that were lacking based off of what you've played or seen in my video here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch RPG videos and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching. We'll see you for the next one. Peace.